Well, in an otherwise disappointing section on the Second World War and Orwell's politics of the collection of Orwell, Ian Williams makes the point that Orwell was not alone in abandoning the hardline anti-imperialist war policy of the ILP. Quote, then, as the war went on, the social unity and the enforced egalitarianism that it entailed brought him to explicit support for the Labour Party, or at least its left wing, where many had drifted from the ILP. Well, it is difficult to say when exactly Orwell began to see virtues in the left wing of the Labour Party. He was evidently dejected, without any hope of a popular surge, when he wrote his first letter to Partisan Review in the very first days of 1941. Quote, I think it is true to say that at the moment we are in the middle of a backwash. In the summer, 1940, in the summer what amounted to a revolutionary situation existed in England, though there was no one to take advantage of it. Possibly the war situation, dictating the political atmosphere in the House of Commons, influenced him. After the fall of Singapore on the 15th of February 1942, which Churchill lamented as the worst disaster and largest capitulation in British history, the Prime Minister's standing was no longer assured. He had found an unlikely rival in national popularity, Sir Stafford Cripps. It would be a long story to retrace the life of Cripps, but followed a contorted route to eminence inside and outside the Labour Party. But what is important for us today is that by the spring of 1942, Cripps had become very popular, largely because he benefited from the new Soviet mania which had swept the country. Why? Because he had been sent by Churchill as ambassador to Moscow, and he sort of encapsulated the Anglo-Soviet alliance. Of course, Churchill had also enthusiastically come round to the idea of the Soviet alliance in the late 30s. But this was forgotten. The man who stood for it was Cripps. By 1942, for the general public, only Cripps symbolized the new friendship. So after Singapore, the fall of Singapore, Churchill had no choice. Heads had to fall. New blood had to be brought in. And leaving the embassy, Cripps became Lord Privy Seal and leader of the House of Commons. And it is in this complex context, largely shaped by positions taken in the 1930s, that Orwell wrote his remarkable letter to Partisan Review on the 8th of May 1942, in which he abandoned his mild support of the left conservatives, Churchill and Eden, as we saw them, as he saw there in 1942, left conservatives, apparently to pin his hopes on the former notoriously erratic ambassador in Moscow, these were his words, as a possible war leader introducing some form of socialism. In this May 1940 letter, Orwell saw that the mass, or argued that the mass of Labour activists and supporters were sound socialists, as opposed to the class collaborators in the House of Commons. This was already, of course, in the subtext of the road to Wigan Pier. Now, the main merit of this letter of the 8th of May 1942 is that it gives us a very clear idea of Orwell's lack of clear ideas as to the situation and future of the leadership of the left. At a time when Churchill's own leadership seemed to have become obsolete. The only clear idea which Orwell continued to have was that the advent of socialism in Britain could certainly not be brought about by, quote, another tame cat like Anglais. Anglais, I remind you, was the leader of the Labour Party. He expressed his incapacity to evaluate Cripps' chances in two passages in the letter, which I do not have the time to quote. Anyway, it seems that as late as the middle month of 1943, around June, July, August 1943, by that time, Orwell now argues that Churchill was the lesser of two evils, because at least he could be trusted to lead the country to victory. Again, in his notes on nationalism, written in May 1945, Orwell came back on these disappointments. After Cripps lost whatever popularity he may have enjoyed in 1942, following his Indian mission and the failure of his Indian mission, after Churchill easily regained the upper hand after the severe defeat of the motion of censure against him in July 1943, well, it seems that Orwell was at a loss to find anybody who could appear as a credible social leader. And curiously, Bevan, Aaron Bevan, is hardly ever mentioned in his writings of the time. And it is curious because, as is well known, his As I Please column, which was repeatedly mentioned this morning, was of course in Tribune, and the editor of Tribune was Aaron Bevan. The managing editor was Aaron Bevan. So he was at least in weekly contact with Bevan, if only for the editorial meetings of the week. What Orwell's biographers seem to tell us is that at Tribune, it was Bevan who made all the concessions. Only no friend disagrees when he writes, far from shifting Tribune shifted him being Orwell. Boca writes of the columns that, quote, although they were often controversial, Bevan always defended him. And Taylor has a revealing passage on their relations. Quote, in the context of the time, the support that Bevan offered to his new recruits, often in the face of severe criticism from readers, was vitally important. The anti-Soviet strain that characterized Orwell's journalism in the latter stage of the war had few imitate.